time for JesterEngine.com's Daily Tech Rundown. Welcome back to Tech Forward. I'm Alex, and joining me is Priya, systems engineer, space nerd, and the only person I know who insists that securing a coffee cup requires engineering tolerances. Big story today. Michaela Benthaus, a paraplegic engineer from Germany, became the first wheelchair user to travel to space on Blue Origin's New Shepard on December 20, 2025. Short suborbital hop, roughly 10 minutes, reached about 65 miles up. She floated free of her chair and called it the coolest experience. Priya, you read the reports. What stood out to you technically and culturally about this flight?
Hi, Alex. Thanks. First, congrats to Michaela. It's a milestone. Technically, it's a useful reminder that suborbital vehicles can be adapted to accommodate passengers with mobility impairments without fundamentally changing mission profiles. Blue Origin's New Shepard reached around 105 kilometers, gave a brief microgravity window, and the capsule environment allowed her to leave her wheelchair safely. Culturally, it moves accessibility from theoretical policy into a real, high-profile demonstration. The optics matter. Seeing someone who uses a wheelchair floating in microgravity reframes expectations for who can participate in commercial spaceflight.
It's a powerful image. Reports mentioned Hans Koenigsmann, the retired SpaceX exec, helped organize and sponsor her trip, and that ticket prices weren't disclosed. From an industry perspective, how does sponsorship like this factor into making space more inclusive?
Sponsorships can accelerate first steps. Sponsors lower financial barriers and create case studies for design teams. When a major flight includes a passenger with a disability, it forces engineering teams to document procedures, identify hazards, and iterate on accessible interfaces, which can then be generalized. But sponsorship alone isn't a long-term solution. We need standards, accessible design pathways, and business models that scale inclusion without relying on one-off philanthropy.
That makes sense. Let's get specific. What changes should spacecraft manufacturers consider to make future flights accessible by design rather than by exception?
Several practical moves. 1. Modular interior layouts with adaptable seating and attachment points so crew and passengers can be secured or transferred safely. 2. Transfer aids. Mechanical lifts or rails to move someone from a wheelchair into a harness or a specialized seat. 3. Accessible control and communication interfaces for emergencies and pre-flight briefings, including tactile, audio, and large-format visual aids. 4. Training for crew on patient transfer and disability-aware procedures. And 5. Involving people with disabilities in design and testing from day one. Nothing beats lived experience.
I like that last point, co-design. You mentioned safety and emergencies. How do engineers balance strict safety requirements with the need for flexible accessibility solutions?
It's about systems engineering and risk modeling. Every accessibility modification must be evaluated for structural loads, egress, and emergency scenarios. But flexibility can be engineered without compromising safety. For example, attachment points can be load rated to the same standards as existing seats. Transfer devices can lock into redundant anchors. Simulations and rigorous testing, including drop and vibration tests with the adapted hardware, validate that changes meet or exceed certification thresholds. The key is planning ahead, not retrofitting in a hurry.
Quick reality check. Once someone floats in microgravity, it looks effortless on video. From a ground logistics standpoint, though, moving someone who uses a wheelchair onto a rocket seems complicated. What practical ground-side changes do you foresee?
Ground infrastructure needs accessible pathways to launch facilities, pressurized transfer vehicles that accommodate wheelchairs, and trained technicians for secure transfers. Launch sites can be remote with rough terrain, so accessible transport vehicles and ramps are non-negotiable. Even something as mundane as restroom access or orientation briefings matters for dignified participation. These are solvable problems, but they require investment.
Let's talk impact beyond space. Michaela said she hopes this advances accessibility on Earth. Do you think a milestone like this can influence design and policy back home?
Absolutely. High-profile demonstrations change narratives and priorities. When industry leaders and the media focus on accessibility in a glamorous domain like space, it raises public awareness and political will. Companies in other sectors may see business value in inclusive design. Also, engineering lessons, modularity, universal design principles, and user-centered testing translate directly to products here on Earth.
Final thoughts. Anything companies or policymakers could do next week if they want to be part of this momentum?
Start by consulting disability advocates and engineers together. Fund pilot programs for accessible space flight accommodations, and push for shared standards across the commercial space industry. And remember, inclusion is engineering plus humility. Listen, iterate, and document.
Great wrap. And Priya, if you ever need a test flight, I'll be your coffee cup securement officer.
Tempting, but I'll need hazard pay and a really good harness.
That's our show for now. Thanks for listening to Tech Forward. Sources for today's segment include reporting from Associated Press, BBC, Global News, ABC News, and Perth Now on Michaela Benthaus's flight. We'll be back with more developments in technology and accessibility next time. The preceding audio summary was created at jesterengine.com, where you can find and verify the original sources.